I guess Palsteron here. And today let's talk about my top 7 picks for League Start for 3.23 Affliction League. Now, these are 7 builds that I have full confidence in, with a wildcard section at the end, a few builds that I'm either not sure about, or for example, my League Starter, which I couldn't thoroughly test enough in time. Some builds will revolve around Transfigured Gems, where people just aren't really sure how hard it will be to get them and how good they actually are because they cannot test them right now. And before we start, I'd say that the most important criteria for your build should be that you like how it looks, that you like how it feels to play, because while League Start is a hype time, you should not really be forced into any builds just because you think they're meta and they're strong. If you don't actually enjoy them, you're going to miss out on a lot of that League Start fun. But with that said, let's get into the video with the number 1, which is Lightning Arrow Deadeye. Now, this build is a certified softcore banger with one of the strongest scaling into endgame. It has a fun ranged playstyle with great clear, instant leech, and decent single target with the help of artillery ballista. And on the topic of endgame, transitioning to tornado shot will be a lot easier because you don't need a helm enchant anymore. You now actually get the +1 secondary projectile on quality. If I had to name any downsides, it would probably be that the build is quite squishy. If you want to make this work in hardcore, you will have to reduce your damage by quite a bit. There's definitely some phases in mid game that are kind of weird decisions between doing damage and actually not dying to every single hit. However, if properly geared, it should not be too much of a problem. Now, if you want the guide for this, check out Crouching Tuna. I will link to his YouTube video and to his max roll written guide down below in the description. Number 2 on the list is the Explosive Arrow Ballista Elementalist. This build has incredible damage across the board. You have ballistas that do the aiming for you, so you can just lean back and chill, place totems, loot. It is a playstyle that I personally have learned to love over the years, especially on League Start, when you want to fully see everything that the new league has to offer and you don't want to think too much about your build. It's also incredibly competitive in solo self-found because this is such easy early gearing. If I had to pick downsides, it's mostly that it's a totem playstyle. For some people, that's good. For some people, it isn't. They want to deal damage themselves. And there is a certain delay to the damage. You're basically sticking fuses into the enemy and you have to wait a little 1 second until it explodes. But after that, you have beautiful clear with your ignite proliferations. I guess another downside would be that you have to use life flask to recover, which for me personally isn't a problem on League Start, but for some people it is. Now, if you want to play this build on hardcore, I personally wouldn't recommend my Elementalist version. I would recommend Zizzarin's champion version instead. For a quick comparison of the builds, the champion version has round about half the damage, maybe a little bit less. It also lacks some of the AoE that Elementalist has, but it is a lot tankier. If you want to play this build, link to my max roll guide will be down below in the description, as well as that I'll also throw in Zizzarin's new update video. Number 3 on the list, the Boneshatter, Juggernaut, or Slayer. Boneshatter is the premier melee build, which, unless one of the new Transfigured Gems replaces it, will also be the number 1 choice for melee this league. If you want to go big bonk, this will be your safest choice. It is an incredibly tanky build and has good clear speed. It also has some great recovery options, even crazier if you go Slayer, but both Juggernaut and Slayer have their distinct advantages. The downside with this build, as with a lot of melee builds, is low boss damage and kind of a weird damage uptime because you have to be next to the boss. And sometimes they just move or have a certain stage and it can get quite annoying. Also, the itemization can be a little rough if you're a new player because you have to make new fizz weapons whenever you need an upgrade. If you want a guide to this one, check out Tripolar Bear. He has both a guide for the Juggernaut version and for the Slayer version down below on max roll. As well as that, check out the godfather of Boneshatter, Karn. I'll link his channel down in the description. I didn't see any update for this league yet, but I'm sure there's going to be one. And in general, his whole channel is very steered toward that skill right now. Number 4 on the list is the Summoned Raging Spirit, or SRS Guardian. Now, this is our only minion build on the list, and I'm usually not really a minion aficionado, but this build just looks incredible. Since you're Guardian, you get completely carried through leveling with the Sentinel of Radiance. I tried it the other day and it actually just feels like cheating. Now, in this build, you basically summon these skulls that seek out enemies and deal damage to them, and Guardian gives you a ton of damaging auras, as well as that some support minions. You have a great mix of offense and defense. It's a very cozy and comfortable playstyle. Also, easy itemization early. This power spike at the start definitely does fall off after around about yellow maps. And at that point, if I had to name any downside, it would definitely be that it's not the fastest playstyle, just because you're kind of capped by how fast your minions are. If you want to play this build, Subtractem made a full guide here on YouTube, as well as that he has a written guide over on Maxroll. Link down in the description. Then number 5, the Detonate Dead Elementalist. This is an incredible all-rounder build that is used by solo self-found players, by racers, and especially hardcore players. It has ridiculous early game power. It can also feel like cheating at times. and it doesn't really need much investment in gear at all. It's just an all-around great build. If I had to name one downside, and this is something that is a no-go for me personally, is it's a 2-button build. You have to first summon corpses and then explode those corpses, and they will ignite and proliferate all over the screen. If that is a problem for you, then this build is a no-go. If this is no problem for you, then this is probably your #1 build. If you want a guide for this, check out Tripolar Bear's max roll guide down below in the description. Number 6 on the list, the Corrupting Fever Champion. This build has an interesting mix. It is a high clear speed build that is quite tanky as well. You basically throw out wand attacks with Kinetic Blast and cover the screen with a debuff called Corrupting Blood. Now, if I had to name a downside, it's definitely the boss damage. It can be quite hard to scale your damage up at a certain point. You need to scale your damage up with +2 levels, which on this skill can get quite expensive in endgame, especially if you have no crafting knowledge. If you want to play this build, check out Tripolar Bear's max roll guide. Link is down in the description. And last but not least, the Hexblast Mine Saboteur. That is my league starter from last league, and it still holds up this league. It fills the screen with purple explosions. It has incredibly high damage on very little gear and surprisingly high clear speed for a miner because it has so much coverage. It's also great for people looking to start in Sanctum, basically get out of the campaign, get a little bit of currency, and then start just making currency that way. And while in endgame there's definitely better Sanctum runners, this is one of the greater ones to start out with. As for downsides, it's mostly that it is not very tanky. Now, you can theoretically make it tanky, but then you take too much away from what makes the build good, and you would decrease your damage too much. So I would not recommend this build for hardcore. As well as that, as with totems, mines are an acquired taste. It is a playstyle that not everybody likes. However, I personally felt very good about it, just putting Detonate mines on left click, so it feels basically like a spellcaster. If you need a guide for this one, I have my league start video from last league, as well as that my max roll guide is up to date. I will link both down in the description. And then let's talk about some wild cards here at the end. Let's have some fun, where I put builds that I cannot really verify whether they're good because they're either using new Transfigured Gems, or they are builds that got adjusted and I cannot really verify because I'm not familiar with the build. The first one is what I'm personally going to league start for 3.23, which is the Caustic Arrow Pathfinder Ballista. This gem just got released yesterday, and we just did a leveling run today, and even on a normal Caustic Arrow, it felt really good. So I can just imagine how it's going to feel with some new power. If you guys don't know, the new gem basically removes the dot pool, but now gives you extra bonuses towards your poison if you want to do overlapping projectiles. But once again, I cannot verify whether it's great. I did play this build actually in 3.19, so I was kind of shocked that it got buffed this much. But since I haven't played it for a while, and that would be kind of unfair to put in a top tier list, I just put it down here. If you want to check it out, once I have the build guide out, link is down in the description. Now, then we have the Righteous Fire Juggernaut, Inquisitor, Elementalist. Some people even go Chieftain. Now, the Righteous Fire gem got changed quite a bit. A lot of people have different takes on it, so I don't really want to go in between there. But I will link you down below to some resources, for example, Pox and also Captain Lance if you're interested in endgame builds. But either way, if you're interested in playing this build on League Start, Pox has great resources and puts a lot of time into helping you out early game. He even has his own wiki page, so that is always a good place to start. Then we have the Splitting Steel champion. If you guys don't know, Splitting Steel has been buffed quite a bit for this league, with splitting projectiles losing their less damage multiplier. As well as that, even though Splitting Steel got a little bit slower, it doesn't have to press Call of Steel anymore every 12 hits, which makes the build a lot more fun to play. If you want to watch out for that, I don't really have a link right now. If I find something, I'll put it down below. And I guess to talk about some other fun Transfigured Gems that I've found so far, the first one is, yes, you're hearing right, Cleave. This Cleave of Rage gives you rage whenever the skill hits an enemy. That means you can have quite some crazy rage and berserk uptime if you have a lot of attack speed. It also gets base radius per 3 rage, so if you have a decked out character, this will probably hit the whole screen or even further. Then the Blade Blast of Unloading, which seems to have some nutty damage, combined with the fact that it's an AoE around you. You don't have to target, and it explodes all your Blade Vortex that you have stored around you, and it deals extra damage. So this can be quite a crazy bosser. Basically, pre-fire all your Blade Vortexes and then explode them in one go. Sounds like a Jung Room build in the making. Then we also have the Cold Snap of Power, which has some very powerful implications in terms of overlapping. It's just very high base damage, high crit, very low cast time, and it can kind of sustain itself. But there's a lot of others that I don't even know about that are on the way. This is only part 1. And once that happens, I will also put out some update videos. If you want to see those, subscribe to the channel. But in general, I hope I could make your decision a little bit easier, or I made it even harder by giving you more ideas. Either way, hope you enjoyed the video, and since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.